Только сейчас прям взорвали КамАЗ с РФ. Короче, блядь, надо отсюда съебаться. Прям в кабину, ёбаный в рот.
The war between Russia and Ukraine continues evolving at a rapid pace as both sides increasingly rely on drones, long-range strikes, and technological adaptation to gain strategic advantages. Over the last several days, military analysts have focused on new battlefield developments, suggesting Ukraine is intensifying efforts to pressure Russian logistics, infrastructure, and operational planning far behind the front lines. Rather than depending purely on direct assaults, Kyiv appears increasingly concentrated on disruption and attrition, designed to slowly weaken Russia's ability to sustain offensive operations over time. This strategy reflects a broader transformation taking place across the conflict. Fuel depots, transportation hubs, command centers, industrial infrastructure, and supply routes have all become increasingly important targets as modern warfare extends far beyond traditional frontline combat. Russian military bloggers have repeatedly expressed concern over the growing scale and sophistication of Ukrainian drone operations. Coordinated attacks involving multiple drones launched from different directions are reportedly becoming more frequent, forcing Russian air defenses to remain under constant pressure. The psychological impact of these operations is becoming increasingly significant. Unlike conventional warfare concentrated around trenches and front lines, long-range strikes create uncertainty deep behind the battlefield. Military facilities, energy infrastructure, transportation systems, and industrial sites can suddenly become vulnerable with little warning. This changes how both sides think about security. At the same time, Ukraine continues benefiting from intelligence support and advanced battlefield coordination provided by Western allies. Satellite surveillance, reconnaissance systems, and targeting assistance have significantly improved Kyiv's ability to conduct precision operations. Russia, however, continues adapting rapidly as well. Moscow has expanded electronic warfare operations, reinforced defensive fortifications, and dispersed military infrastructure to reduce vulnerability to drone attacks and precision strikes. Even so, analysts say the pace of technological adaptation inside the war remains extremely high. The conflict is increasingly becoming one of the first full-scale drone wars in modern military history, where both sides continuously experiment with new battlefield tactics in real time. FPV drones, AI-assisted targeting, electronic warfare systems, and long-range strike capabilities are now central components of modern warfare. The implications extend far beyond Ukraine itself. Military planners across NATO countries are carefully studying the conflict because many of the tactics being developed today could shape future military doctrine throughout Europe and beyond. Defense experts are particularly focused on how relatively inexpensive drones are capable of threatening highly expensive military systems and critical infrastructure. This has already forced several governments to reconsider how future battlefield logistics and air defense systems should be structured. Meanwhile, the economic pressure of the conflict continues affecting both Russia and Ukraine. Russia has maintained large-scale military production despite sanctions, but doing so requires enormous industrial mobilization and financial resources. Ukraine, meanwhile, remains heavily dependent on continued Western support to sustain defensive operations and replace battlefield losses. As a result, time itself is becoming one of the most important weapons in the conflict. Both Russia and Ukraine appear convinced they can outlast the other side if enough pressure is maintained over a long enough period of time. This means the war is increasingly becoming a contest of industrial capacity, technological innovation, endurance, and political will rather than purely territorial gains. At the same time, civilians continue facing the consequences. Air raid sirens, blackouts, infrastructure damage, and long-range strikes have become part of everyday life across large parts of Ukraine. Russia has also experienced increasing disruption in several regions due to Ukrainian strikes targeting strategic infrastructure. Several analysts now believe both sides are preparing for a prolonged phase of the war where sustained pressure becomes more important than major offensives. In many ways, the battlefield is no longer limited to trenches and front lines. Instead, the conflict increasingly extends into logistics systems, industrial infrastructure, transportation corridors, and energy networks far behind the battlefield itself. For Ukraine, this strategy may represent one of the few realistic ways to offset Russia's larger manpower and industrial advantages. Russia, meanwhile, continues attempting to maintain pressure through mass drone attacks, missile strikes, and continuous artillery operations. The Kremlin appears determined to convince both Ukraine and Western governments that prolonged resistance will eventually become unsustainable. But despite the pressure, Ukraine continues adapting. And that adaptability may ultimately become one of the defining factors of the entire war. Before we finish, I want to hear your thoughts on this situation. Do you think Ukraine's evolving strategy can significantly change the course of the war, or will Russia eventually overwhelm Ukraine through superior resources and industrial production? Leave your opinion down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our latest updates on Ukraine, Russia, NATO, and major global conflicts as they happen. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next report.